Her name was Henrietta Lacks, but science knew her only as HeLa. Her cells are alive today, more than 70 years after her death. They have been instrumental in developing the polio vaccine, understanding cancer, and advancing gene mapping. Yet for decades, the woman behind this gift was a footnote, her family unaware of her legacy. Before she was an immortal cell line, Henrietta was a vibrant young mother from rural Virginia. Her cells were taken without her knowledge or consent, a common practice for Black patients in segregated wards. For half a century, scientists cultivated and sold her cells, building careers and fortunes, while her family struggled in poverty. The story of Henrietta Lacks is a stark reminder. Behind every scientific discovery, there is a human being with a story. Her cells became a cornerstone of modern medicine, but the woman herself was erased from the narrative. This is about restoring her name, bridging the gap between the celebrated cell line and the forgotten woman. It's a story of science, but more importantly, of family, faith, and the fight for justice. In 1951, Baltimore was a city of medical innovation and deep racial segregation. Henrietta Lacks, a young mother of 5, sought help at Johns Hopkins Hospital, one of the few that treated Black patients. She trusted the doctors to cure her aggressive cervical cancer. During treatment, doctors took tissue samples from her cervix without her consent. This was standard for poor Black patients in public wards, seen as research material for the greater good. Henrietta endured painful treatments, hoping to return to her children. She died in agony at 31, buried in an unmarked grave, while her cells began an extraordinary new life. The doctors saw only a patient, not the woman whose cells would change medicine. Her family, left in poverty, had no idea of her scientific legacy. The act of taking her cells set in motion both unprecedented discovery and profound ethical failure. Henrietta was more than a cell line. She was a loving mother, remembered for her kindness and strength. Her story is a reminder of the human cost behind medical progress. Her legacy was far more complex than anyone could have imagined. At Johns Hopkins, scientist George Gee struggled to grow human cells outside the body, until Henrietta's. Her cells didn't die. They doubled every 24 hours, creating the first immortal human cell line, HeLa. HeLa cells revolutionized science, enabling the development of the polio vaccine and research into cancer, AIDS, and more. They were sent worldwide, used to study diseases, test drugs, and even travel to space. Researchers built careers on HeLa, but the woman behind the cells remained unknown. The name Henrietta Lacks was lost, replaced by a code. Her cells' immortality was a biological marvel, but their origin was shrouded in anonymity and ethical oversight. The aggressive cancer that killed Henrietta made her cells invaluable for research. The very thing that ended her life became a source of healing for millions. HeLa cells became a multi-billion-dollar industry, but her family remained in the shadows. The disconnect between scientific progress and personal tragedy is at the heart of this story. Henrietta's cells achieved immortality, but her humanity was forgotten. Her legacy is both miraculous and deeply complicated. While HeLa cells transformed medicine, Henrietta's family struggled in poverty, unaware of her legacy. Her children grew up without their mother, living near Johns Hopkins, the very institution that housed her immortal cells. HeLa cells were mass-produced, creating a biomedical industry worth billions. Pharmaceutical companies profited, but the Lacks family received nothing, not even recognition. As Henrietta's cells generated wealth and cures, her family often couldn't afford basic health care. The system that took her cells without consent continued to neglect her descendants. The commercialization of HeLa exposed a painful inequity at the heart of American medicine. Scientific progress was built on the exploitation of the vulnerable. The Lacks family's suffering was an unforeseen consequence of a new bioeconomy. Their story reveals the uncomfortable truth. Medical advancement can come at a human cost. The ethical lines blurred as profit entered the picture. The legacy of HeLa is inseparable from the injustice faced by her family. For over 20 years, the Lacks family knew nothing about HeLa. In the 1970s, researchers contacted them for genetic testing, leaving the family confused and frightened. They learned, in shock, that their mother's cells were alive in labs worldwide. Henrietta's daughter Deborah was especially affected, torn between awe and anger. The family struggled to understand how their mother could be both dead and alive. They felt violated, her body and memory used without consent, her genetic information published without privacy. Some were angry at the lack of compensation. Others, like Deborah, wanted her mother's story told. The revelation forced them to confront a legacy of racial injustice in medicine. Their grief became public, their private loss transformed into a scientific legacy. The burden of this knowledge was heavy, opening old wounds and creating new ones. The Lacks family became reluctant stewards of a story that was never theirs to choose. Henrietta Lacks's story might have remained hidden if not for a journalist's determination. The Lacks family, wary of outsiders, slowly opened up, especially through Henrietta's daughter Deborah. Together, they uncovered the truth, visiting Henrietta's hometown, meeting scientists, and piecing together her history. Deborah's journey was personal. She wanted to understand the science and reclaim her mother's name. Seeing her mother's cells under a microscope was a powerful, emotional moment. The story became not just about immortal cells, but about a Black woman whose life and legacy mattered. The immortal life of Henrietta Lacks brought her story to the world, sparking global conversations about bioethics and consent. Institutions were forced to reckon with the past. The goal was to restore Henrietta's legacy, not as a code, but as a person. Her story shifted the narrative from science to humanity. The quest was to give a name back to the ghost in the machine. The Lacks family's fight was never just about money. It was about recognition and control over Henrietta's legacy. In 2013, after the HeLa genome was published without consent, the family gained a voice in how her genetic data was used. A committee, including Lacks family members, now reviews requests for HeLa genome research. Scientists must acknowledge Henrietta and her family in their work. In 2023, the family settled a lawsuit with a biotech company that profited from HeLa cells, a form of long-overdue justice. The settlement was confidential, but it marked a shift. The ethical standards of the past are no longer acceptable. Henrietta's story changed science, leading to stronger protections for patients and more robust rules for consent. Her legacy is not just in medical breakthroughs, but in the changes she forced upon the scientific community. One overlooked life can change the world, demanding that we do better. Justice means ensuring Henrietta Lacks's name and story are never forgotten.